Actually, he had I'm almost positive. I can't find it in front of me, but I'm almost positive he had just pitched on Sunday, did he not? And it was like
and threw like 70-some pitches.
Yeah, exactly. So
that
was the thing
on a one-day rest.
And you got one of the best bullpens in baseball.
Coming off 70-some pitches. Yeah, I did read that, and so all the more reason to question the move. But people are going to forget about that now, and they've got a 7-game series. By the way, Jerry, I just thought I'd ask you. Yeah. I am not a big fan of one game, elimination after a 162-game schedule. How do you feel about the one game thing? Major League Baseball seems to be enamored of it. I don't think it's fair. I think at the minimum it ought to be a 3-game series in the wild card. Where are you on that whole one game deal?
2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. That to me would be the fairest way of going about doing it, which is kind of a modern adaptation of the original way, 3 out of 5, in the
right.
In the first round, used to have that in their first round. Their first round used to be the 5-game series, and then the second and third would be the 7-game series, and then they, for money value, decided to add the extra games. But yeah, I mean, it's easier to say it this year because it doesn't involve the Indians. Last year, it just sounded like sour grapes. Oh well, it shouldn't be one and done. The Indians lost, but it does feel like. I get it that it puts a premium on winning your division. Like that really adds value to that because now you're guaranteed an actual playoff series, and the people that can't win 5 games down the stretch, when they need to, and they're what I mean, with everybody's losing all that. Look at the way the last 2 weeks played out. Nobody wanted them playoff spots. I'm telling you, man, they were trying to give them to the Indians. The Indians just didn't cooperate enough down the stretch. But that's kind of, but I'm with you. It sucks to go 162 and be with it the whole way and then be one and done. But I do like the value that it places on winning your division because it makes that at the utmost premium.
Yeah, that's true. There is an upside to it, and I guess Major League Baseball, takes account of what their fans think, and I think it's a popular thing with fans in general. It must be, or they had to do some poll testing or whatever to know how this would go over, and they seem to feel that this is what fans like, and they must have some real statistical basis for what they decided to do. So I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of it. I think a 2 out of 3 thing is obviously a much more fair test of it, and I guess. You're already up against a problem in Major League Baseball, and that is snow for World Series games.
The
the 1st of November. I can remember in '95 it snowed at Progressive Field, at Jacobs Field.
Sure did.
One of the World Series games that I went to, the one that Eddie Murray won with a base hit. I remember there were snowflakes flying that entire game, and everybody was freezing. And we're playing games later and later now, and. Just you get into November and you've got an East Coast team in the World Series, you've got a real good chance of playing in a snowstorm.
Yeah, I mean, to go 2 out of 3, because that was my solution too when I look at it, is that you look at the back end of the schedule and you go, well, damn, now we're going to be going up till Thanksgiving here playing games. But the other side of that, though, is not necessarily, because I was talking to some friends one time about this, and I said, well, we were throwing out different ideas. It's like, couldn't you do 2 out of 3? But it's all 3 games in a row. I mean, you shouldn't get the benefit of a day off if you got the wild card. You're going to play 3 in a row. You're going to play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
At the same time, though, you've got to have the capability of playing a game in both ballparks.
That's true.
You might have to play
no
consecutive days, but you still got to have a travel thing. And they normally leave a travel day, but in the playoffs. But I guess you wouldn't be able to have that. Anything that extends the season, though, there's going to be a legit argument against just because of weather.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about the travel. You're right. There has to be a travel day in there. Otherwise, I mean, because I'm thinking of how you could truncate it. I didn't even play that into the thought. But yeah, I mean, hey, it is what it is. And you're right. Seems like a lot of fans dig the one and done aspect of it, and a lot of, baseball's, and basketball have their series. Everybody else is one and done, the Final Four, NCAA, stuff like that. So I don't know, but it does feel, especially last year when you come out on the losing end of it, like, man, that was a whole lot of work to put in to come out of this thing with just a one and done here in the playoffs, man. And yeah, I mentioned about the A's. The 2006 Division Series, they swept Minnesota. That's the last playoff series that the Oakland A's have won. So for all the talk of the success, and I was joking with Bruce Wood earlier before the show, he sent me a message, and I was going to ask you this anyway. Said that supposedly there's a couple of parties meeting with the Dolans today in regards to potential sale of the Indians. So there is some stuff going on where there's at least some discussions going on, people figuring out who's coming from where and all that stuff. And I told him, I said, look, I understand Moneyball. I appreciate the thought and the work that goes into it, but I hate it. I'm just going to be honest. I'm like most fans. I cannot stand figuring out how many, wins over replacement this guy, and you're trying to justify why this guy is only worth that much. And I would rather just go out and get the best players, and I really don't care what the owner spends, because that's what you do when you own a team. Like, I would prefer it be, we all would. We would prefer that it just be that way. Here's the players we need. Let's go out and go get them and then throw them on the field and see what happens. I understand and appreciate Moneyball, but just as a fan, I don't like it. I would prefer not to have to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, it's a lot of work, a whole lot of work for your front office, for your team, for your managers, and for your fans to put together a whole perfect offseason of budget signings. Then go through a whole 162-game season of getting the most, wringing the absolute most out of that roster that you can to get to the playoffs and lose in the first game or the first round every year for 10 straight years. That is a lot of work for very little reward, in my opinion.
Well, you can look at it that way, and also you can look at it in the way of the old saying that necessity is the mother of invention. That this didn't just happen on the by chance, or this was something that a small market team felt that they had to deal with, and it felt that this was the path that they had to take to maximize the dollars that they spent, because the dollars that they had were limited, and so this was, the smart way to go, and they had to do this, and they owed it to their fans to be this way, because they had limited resources. So, you can see both sides of it. They're not playing Moneyball because they have unlimited money. They're doing it because they don't have unlimited money,
I gotta
so that's the preference would be an owner with more money than sense who just hires some knowledgeable baseball people to run his team and manage it. That's the perfect world. That's what the Steinbrenners and people of his oak did for years and years, and what some teams are able to do every single year, picking over the best of the free agents and let me see what I like to sign Lester, Shields, or XYZ free agent pitcher. And you pretty much have your pick, and really, frankly, the players don't have a whole lot of say in where they're going, because the union pressures dictate that the guy that has the last dollar will get the player.
Couple of things,
and agents have a little bit of input into that, but there's a lot of pressure for these players to go where the guy is going to pay them the last dollar. I think Jim Thome and CC Sabathia both faced that reality when they became free agents. Even had they wanted to stay in Cleveland, they were not going to be permitted to.
I get that, and I've got some counterpoints to a couple of things. Number one is I'm not one of the fans that wants the Indians to sign Lester and Scherzer and Shields in the offseason, but I would prefer if you picked one of them and signed them. You know what I mean? Like, I would prefer that you target one or two of the better players in the game and attempt to put them on your team. I'm not asking you to be the Dodgers and have a $300 million outfield with one of them that doesn't even play. I'm just saying, that, but here's my thing, is everything you just said makes total sense if you buy the argument that the Indians are playing Moneyball because the money coming in because of the attendance is minimal and blah, blah, blah in the small market. I'm also and this is not just a Dolan issue, this is baseball in general. I'm one of those people that believes that every single one of them are disingenuous about the money that they make. I believe that these teams make a truckload more money behind the scenes than people realize. Now, I know they've got a lot to pay out too, but between the money, the revenue that comes in from the TV, which has grown in the last 10 years, that changes this argument, because just like football, that money just continues to grow, and it's split amongst the teams as well as the revenue sharing. Now, I understand that the Dodgers and the Yankees have their network that will pay them hundreds of millions more than that. Okay, I get that point. That's where those teams have an advantage in spending $300 million on your payroll. I understand that that's why the Dodgers can do that. But there's more than enough money being made behind the scenes from revenue sharing and more from the TV money that all of these teams are given on a national level to field more than $100 million payroll. And that is where a lot of people see ownership pinching pennies to make a profit, which I'm not going to blame any businessman for wanting to make a profit. I'd rather deal with the asshole that goes, hey, look, I'm going to make a profit on my investment and I'm going to spend wisely and I'm not going to throw my money away. But don't act like the money's not there to be spent, because that's where I disagree with some people. When you see, and I know Forbes' numbers, baseball swears that they're not true, but when they claim that the most horrible team in baseball history was also the most profitable team in baseball history, that's a problem, and that's telling me that you guys are making way more money than you let on.
Well, yeah, and there certainly is a problem, and I think in all pro sports, with transparency about where the dollars are coming from and all these secondary dollars, and I'm talking about concessions, I'm talking about parking, I'm talking about advertising, and all those kinds of areas where the money is sort of off book, and there really is no way for the fan or the public to get their arms wrapped around it and really take a look at it, because it's being very well masked by the clubs and by the sports in general. So certainly there's an issue there. But like you say, the numbers that are public are the numbers that you get for cable TV rights, where the Yankees get $150 million and the Indians get 15. That's a very quantifiable difference, and it's a difference between not caring whether your free agents work out or not, because you just throw them on the trash heap if they don't, go sign another one, and a team that has to be more judicious about how their money gets spent. So I guess you feel that if there's off-book dollars, that the off-book dollars, whether it's parking concessions or club seating or whatever it might happen to be, is a relative constant from one club to another, versus the $100 million per year differences that there are in cable TV rights.
Right, and again, I'm a business guy. I get that. I'm on that side of the ledger too. Like I'm not standing here saying, you should be forced to lose money because you made the decision to own a team or whatever. But, I get that. I don't know. There's a lot of mixed bags to it. And that's why I say I don't beat the Dolans are the worst owners in the history of the world. They're not the best either. There's things I don't like about what they've done. But there's things that they get blamed for that's not their fault too. So it's a double-edged sword. That being said, would I have any problem with them selling the team to somebody that says, you know what, it's a status thing to own a team? And see, that's where I get into it too, is you got different kinds of owners. You got owners that have more money than they know what to do with, that strictly own a team for the ability to say, I own a team, and hey, look at me, I'm the big shot, and I own a football team, or I own a baseball team.
It's an ego project with
exactly,
a lot of them, for sure.
And I remember Dan Coughlin. I don't know if you remember Dan, long time
Cleveland.
Sure. Yeah, long time Cleveland guy. He was on the show a couple of times, and he brought that up before. He goes, man, he said, people talk about Modell, and they talk about the Dolans and this and that. He said, where everybody messed up? They just twisted it up when they were bringing the expansion team back. He goes, where Cleveland went wrong is the Dolan family was trying to get the football team. They were trying to be the team, and I think they were the ones that had Bernie Kosar as part of their backing group.
Their group, yeah.
But they were trying to get the football team, and instead, things ended up the way they did, where Lerner got moved into the football slot, so then the Dolans turned their attention to acquiring another team in Cleveland, which ended up being the Indians. The difference is that baseball's an uncapped sport where money can be spent freely like water. And Dan was like, Jerry, what people don't realize is the Dolans would have been just fine in a capped sport. Nobody'd be calling them cheap because they would have spent whatever they had to be competitive. Don Shula was going to be the general manager and was going to run the football operations. And he goes, instead, they ended up in a sport where it just turned into the Wild West with the salary, and it very quickly spiraled to a place that they have no interest in going.
Yeah, that's true, and they